Chilly here with Sirius Talis Moon, and this is Mars Hour Saturn Day. Mercury is approaching Mars at 16 and 17 degrees Scorpio, ascendant 26 Scorpio, separating from conjunction with Black Moon Lilith, and in heaven ruled by Mercury at 5 degrees Virgo. Venus in Gaia, 5 degrees Libra. And I want to talk about something that very likely happens also in Israel, or happened in Israel, but I was less informed, and is now happening in Netherlands. I've covered the case of Arno van Kessel. I just learned about it yesterday, so this is why I haven't tended to that before. But it's good because in June I don't think I would have the inform. In June, MK often was not declassified yet, and I would not have the information that I have today. So I want to talk about something that happens in the Netherlands. So first of all, there uh, um, there is a class lawsuit against the Netherlands government around the COVID um, and many other things to do with basically allegations to do with war crime and crimes against humanity. So that began around the COVID, and it's a big deal type of thing. But this pops something that I definitely predicted coming to fruition towards the end of Neptune in Pisces, together with Saturn. And I said that the Rolodex is going to get, there's going to be another chapter in the Rolodex, is what I'm saying, because 2012 was the Helsinki Committee, and that was around the ingress of Neptune into Pisces, which usually begins another chapter. And a lot of the no torture techniques are challenging to prove in court. And now, when we have the class litigation around the COVID and all the things that happened when Nihul was successful 28 years ago, because Detru began to sink. Thanks, even people like Annika Lucas that had their own trauma be awakened following the Detru exposure. Mark Detru was kind of a diddler, and Epstein, when he was arrested, he said immediately he's a small link in a megalithic chain. And then they brought Michel Nihul to remedy that. And this is basically the walk of shame. By the way, I know about the connection to the juristic system following accusation of Judge Joris Demming. Okay, that was accused. In his case, it was boys, and then one of the major true crime. Yes, public figures that later was assassinated was speaking in favor of Deming. And so that was an entire jurisdiction walk of shame, where people were afraid to go against their colleagues, but it can be traced back to the Rolodex. And at that time, Van Kessel would have been a lawyer for like 3-4 years. He would have been a very young lawyer, probably still finalizing apprenticeship and just making his first steps. That being said, it would take 28 years because we have a Saturn return to the Rolodex affairs. So it would be 28 years that he would have the time to, however young Van Kessel was, the Detru affair was megalithic. Okay, there was the White March in Paris. It was a big deal. Let's just put it that way. He knew he knew that, and that would have given him around. And those people would have been, some of them would have been his mentors, some of them would have been his teachers, some of them would have been his colleagues. So by the time that he became from an attorney to his legal position, today as a political prisoner, he would have 28 years. And so do the many other legal stuff. Now, here's to say, probably a lot of them wanted to, or tried to, or were afraid to, and trying to come up with something they can use in court. And probably a lot of them went through no-touch torture, if they even tended to it. But the thing is that MK often no-touch torture and targeting individuals would be considered something that's very difficult to prove in court, and thus uh, that bubble paramounted to judges facing on a large scale no-touch torture and things that are difficult to prove in court today. And this is where there is a secret revolution in juristication in Netherlands right now. Um, Again, Pluto going through the 8th house, things swept under the rug. Libra would be the 4th house for Netherlands, and we're still for the 1800 chart, and we're still on the purgatory of the April 2023 eclipses, and this is both in terms of the people, okay, but Libra is also jurisdiction and what they call Lady Justice, okay, named after the lady that is blindfolded holding the scales and trying to balance the scales. And by the way, there's a saying that the people that practice the dog occult use the odd scale. And I first saw that when I attended a political assassination case, and I just paid attention to that scale being odd. And so yeah, so that is whether that's the reason for the symbolism is true or not. That's just an interesting factor, and we call it Lady Justice. And we know that when it comes to humiliation rites in the secret societies, feminization, humiliation rituals pertain to anything that is considered the feminine or would be considered yin in Chinese medicine and philosophy. And this is where Lady Justice is a woman. Okay, so basically, there is also a humiliation ritual of the justice and jurisdiction system as an occultistic ritual. And that what can I say? If the Lady Justice being seen as a whore that is raped and humiliated. And one could definitely make the analogy between the justice system or Lady Justice to what's happening to both boys, girls, women, and now judges in Netherlands, and probably all around the world. It's just that that's an example where I ran into that, and they are basically suddenly arresting judges. I said what I said is suddenly arresting judges and imprisoning them or putting them through no-touch torture and and all these things. And this is where those judges, they're going to have to speak up. And eventually, I believe they're going to have to speak up both about the no-touch torture, which they began to speak up about, but also, and they're going to have to find a way to turn that into something one can prove in court. Um, and at the same time, this is the expiration date of planning what to do about their colleagues that participated in the Rolodex. And else that is the jabs are the little bubble, the the extortion cults that are wealth consolidation, where both the people that are doing the jabbing, and I don't mean like I'm jabbing Mark, okay? I meant Pfizer. So those that are doing the bioweapon, okay, allegedly, it's not allegedly anymore because there was a leak of the Dutch government that's not allegedly, and then they're trying to basically remove the people in the juristic system that would begin to speak, because if they speak about that, they will be forced to speak about no-touch torture, and they would be forced to speak about how they use no-touch torture to silence judges during the Rolodex. Um, and perhaps those methods were even used against Mark Detrue in prison. Now, one cannot claim that Mark Detrue was falsely imprisoned. That being said, no-touch torture could have been used to keep him uh, from from singing the names that he was very ready to sing, and and like I said, it's Saturn return for the Detrolodex. So now we have a fascinating situation where the entire juristication system is going in Soviet Netherlands. um, and this is and now here is the thing. The previous before Dick Schoof, there was a certain prime minister for half a Saturn cycle, basically. For half a Saturn cycle, that would be 14 years. There was a prime minister to the Netherlands, and and not only that, there was a time where he was caretaking uh, prime minister, which would be even more authorities. And so, so that is how Saturn. I talked about Saturn. It's Saturn Day. It's basically half a cycle to the 28 years of the Rolodex affair, and by the way, the picture that I talked about, I don't know if it was the same picture for the M&M. There are some people that said it was not Mark the True with Mark Rutte, and so on and so forth. I was just doing the Sinistry as kind of like a fun episode, um, and I just thought I just thought that was interesting. Um, but this is something that's going to be quite challenging for Saturn return, for a second Saturn return, for Mark Rutte. And we definitely see in there, and I have to say also, because Libra is also marketing, branding, image, and for example, when people want to litigate against the Netherlands, the branding and the marketing often puts Mark Rutte as the target, although it's an entire government and so on and so forth. And any prime minister, structurally, even if we talk extortion codes, would have to have the dirt on his on his colleagues, and so that can explain both Benjamin Netanyahu and unelected positions ending up being prime minister. Yes, and then moment of silence for people that prided themselves in being the mentor. But um, but this is something that's happening with the jurisdiction system. And the way out for the judges that are going through that is both in practice preparing a protocol that um, brings from the ashes the actual science regarding the body mind question, the knowledge that we have that putting people through perpetual trauma makes them more susceptible to frequencies, and mind control that is also done by occult rituals on them, and that in interface with certain technologies is absolutely evidence in court. So these judges will have to come up with that, with translating from their own experience with translating my scientific, contribution and other people's scientific contribution to jurisdiction process that protects that protects by the law targeted individuals and targeted individuals by MK often worldwide. Those things are funded by classified projects, which is yes, our taxes go into classified projects, and those classified projects are basically doing what is called economic hitmanship, false flags, targeted individuals, and political assassinations as well. So, and because MK often is declassified, so this is no longer allegedly, with the billions of testimonies we have of targeted individuals around the world, um, me being a small link in a megalithic chain of testimonies. And they will have to address the last time that an act like this was probably enacted, because this is probably a reenactment of something that went smoothly or relatively smoothly in 1996 during the Rolodex, during the Mark Det Rolodex. Okay. Okay. Um, and so whatever went smoothly with basically silencing the true from discussing okay the other links in the chain to okay, and I brought the chart of Michel Nihul a while ago that was brought on board to kind of make sure that the fire stops at Detru. It was besieging Detru so that it wouldn't permeate to that the exposure wouldn't be permeating to other links in that chain. But what went smoothly with changing the judges that tended to the Mark the True case and the legal staff 28 years ago is something that the entire jurisdiction system that is now a different system, okay, because those were many of them were just young lawyers still doing apprenticeship, but they had 28 years to look into that case, to address that case, to build frameworks to litigate target those who target individuals and protect targeted individuals also from no-touch torture. There was 28 years. Okay, 5 years old, 5 years old career of juristication, and very likely a lot of them probably already tended to that and did that, but they're going to have to bring into fruition their efforts by doing that. Again, the Trolodex was 1996. We are in 2025, and with the Saturn going back and forth, okay, it's a little bit, we are approaching 30, we're almost closing 30 years for the true case, and basically there were 28 years. There were I speak in Saturn cycles, but there were almost 30 years to prepare the ground to basically expose, okay, what happened, what was that link in the Dutroux case, and was Mark Dutroux being tortured in order for him to not whistleblow on that list from within jail, and he spent life imprisonment. Okay, was sentenced to life imprisonment, which I can't say was false. I can't say he's a political prisoner in that sense, but he is also a political prisoner in the sense that he wanted to expose the name list and everything, and there was a full stop being put to that. So what would be the techniques that they would use on Mark Dutroux? Um, to keep him in silence. And now this thing paramounted on a worldly scale to the litigations being around medical bioweapon under the guise of Pfizer, Moderna, and so on. Connection to the WEF, okay, connection to the WEF. And I don't know what more were they litigating there. It was basically use of bioweapon of a military operation that is basically crimes against humanity that is funded by classified projects targeting individuals. And as a part of wealth consolidation ritual abuse practices that go from, you know, the children that were not saved are now the nations that have to stand in their sovereignty, or the people that have to stand in their sovereignty in the face of globalization of governance forces. So for me, I just try to take a look at the chart because that thing exploded in June 2025, and that would be probably June, July, August, September, October. So that would be around the 6 months that Pluto was retrograde and now is going direct. So my prediction is that Pluto reaching the second and third degree of Aquarius would be another point of unraveling things about the Van Kessel political imprisonment case. And Saturn going direct, okay, would probably be another such case. It was around eclipses with Saturn in Pisces, and now Saturn being almost back to that point. That case comes up again. And it came by around September 11 even, around the eclipses that we had in the Virgo Pisces that I said are very triggering of the Netherlands 1800 chart, Mark Rutte's chart, Geertje Wilders' chart. And I don't know what's his place in that scandal. I know he wanted to distinct himself from Davos and have like a Gilden. He could himself be considered a political prisoner in his country because of his being persecuted for what he said against Islam. And yet, like I said, it was the Lars Roman exposing, basically being abused by Wilders and Rutte, and with them being abused as well, and him having to abuse as well. So that one was another layer to the intricacy that we didn't have at the Rolodex. More things that I can say. The moon was just crossing Ketu, so it's bringing up the nodes, the eclipses, that are going to unravel more about that. Sun Spica. Okay, Spica is both the ascendant of Israel, but it's also Spica has to do with fairness and jurisdiction, and she's opposing Chiron in Aries, Chiron Andromeda. Okay, it all happens around the returning of the kidnapped people, the ending of the war in Gaza, hopefully ending of the war in Gaza, actually sanctions being removed from Israel following these steps. And just at this time, there is this issue with the jurisdiction and attempts to basically do a nihul on the juristic system again, 28 years after. And now it's time that people will start talk about the things that they are afraid that will make them look crazy. Okay, that's because that's how they managed to keep that megalithic chain that was a link in from being exposed. That is how the Epstein list is being kept from being exposed, or the Diddler list, which people are probably not even aware that there is one. Oh, by this time they are aware, because Diddler, Epstein, they're true. Okay. Um, so, for those that have been wondering about the housing crisis, the amount of properties and real estate that these people would have, and the amount of rituals that were done in and on those real estates, could be the answer to a lot of our housing problems. More to do with that. Juppie Procyon, Mark Rutte having a very, very, very strange Jupiter return in the 11th house. You see, in astrology, when we talk about Jupiter returns, once in 12 years, it's usually a very benefic time in an individual's life. And Procyon is about being favored. But Jupiter rules Saturn, and it's Saturn return. So yeah, that's it. Does somehow manage to, I hope, remediate or alleviate a little bit of the things, but not by not taking accountability. And that's the thing with Saturn. It's basically karma to how one was favored. But also understanding what the mechanism behind. Okay, the person was also ritually abused and so on and so forth. I'm not going to talk about the connections to Demic. I don't know if that is true. It's just like there's a rumors going that that Mark Rutte is the son of Joris Demic. I don't know if that's true. Um, it's like some say that he's a clone and some say that he's the son of Demic, and I'm like, I don't know. Okay, it's just a funny rumor, and I'm not going to do synastry about that. So. Um, the patriarchy and its challenges. Um, what's been on with the Netherlands 1800 chart? So there would be Jupiter in the first house of Netherlands 1800 chart, Uranus in the 12th house, Pluto in the 8th, which I addressed, and Neptune Saturn will go to the 10th house of Netherlands 1800 chart, which is the leaders. And the public status of Netherlands in the international arena. Right now, the international arena has been addressed, or Netherlands' role in the international arena is being addressed. Think about it. The ICJ is sitting pretty in Netherlands. Okay, that's where people are. That's the place that decides if people are doing war crimes or not. And so some people say, well, that's Israel, that's this, that's that. Well, that's true. Like, even if it's Israel, that there was a lot of Netherlands in that Israel, and a lot of Israel in that Netherlands. Um, um, so I don't know. One more thing. Yeah, the eclipses. The global importance of Netherlands is coming to the forefront. Its role in creation of peace and false flags Okay, or why was Netherlands favored in terms of like putting the ICJ in Netherlands? The connection to Israel. Okay, that would be Fort House, and that's still in the shade of the April 2023 eclipses. Netherlands might wish to shed its. First of all, this can Ketu Fort House can give in a country's chart a false flag. Um, it means that they might want to have. They might be losing people or land. Um, Now that can be very weird because if, let's say, the ascendant of Israel is in that fourth house, it might mean that Israel land is somehow belonging to Netherlands, and they might be losing that. And so uh, it's just like the ways in which such a thing can go about. Um, this is what I see for now. But Saturn in the 10th house of Netherlands. Again, I don't think that Saturn Neptune. Okay, I don't think that can be just something. Um, and here's the thing: it's on the judges that are being now the targeted individuals of no touch torture and other types, of course. But judges, their role is to put people in prison sometimes, and now that they are dealing with that, it's kind of like. Um, okay, they have to what they haven't changed about the imprisonment system, about the legal procedure, about being informed of the science when it comes to evidence. Now it's their karma that they have to change that, and that will dictate how easy the passage would be for them. Whereas I don't really think that we can pull another Mark Dutroux scandal without the Dutch people completely going like those people having the police has been demonstrating with the people in COVID, and I really don't think they can pull off um, yet another. Okay, so sun for the Netherlands chart, 1800 chart, I believe is above the horizon. I think it was a Pisces sun. I'm not sure. I would need to check that factor again, but definitely, I think that this Saturn is meaningful, even if it's ruling Mars sign, or if it's a day chart, that would mean that Saturn going into Mars sign would be breaking down the rules that Netherlands has been so proud of, um, and decomposing, okay, a lot of things. And then Mars is going to do his turn around the zodiac, which takes about 2 and 2 months, 2 and 3 months, 2 years and 3 months, 2 years and 2 months cycle, which is the duration of Saturn in Aries. Okay, the duration will be containing that Mars passage through the entire zodiac. So the structure of the rules around each and every topic, but also the rules around the government, the structure of the government, the structure of the leadership, um, will be broken, because Mars is broken things, to create a sovereignty that stands the test of time. And according to the passage of Mars around the houses, is how that government has, and its rules and its structure have been affecting various matters, where it's hotels, prison systems, um, yes, hospitals, um, housing, in international affairs, okay, the people, and so on and so forth. I think the many things that Netherlands was trying to do to keep something from being in the public eye will create both a delay around exposure, and then if I think about what happened with Van Kessel, there was a delay around the exposure of the case internationally, and then that delay would mean that that would be exposed after MK Ultra was declassified, after the war in Gaza began to end. So that would mean after there are already won class lawsuits around the world against Pfizer and Moderna. So that delay, and after the attempt to control the messages that people send to each other under the guise of protecting the children, backfired very seriously, so much that the EU had to take it back. Even going, having implications on the prospective digital IDs that are having serious resistance to that, which are supposed to be the foundation of a social credit score system. And that, of course, is about, well, before we go social credit score, let's hear from Mark the True. What has happened to him that kept him from talking about the links in that chain? And who are the other links if he has active memory? and so and so I'm sure he would love to provide that information. It is okay, because it's kind of like there's no way Mark Detru, and I think he finished serving a life sentence. But I still think that the 20 something years that he was still in prison. I've no idea if he's still in prison. I kind of think that there is no riches in the world that can compensate for that. Um, and and the incentive to keep him silent is also having expiration date as well. Venus, Neptune, Rahu, with fifth lunar mention as I speak. Venus, Neptune, Rahu. That might be a date where we will have. Right now, Venus is in Libra, but by Venus crossing Rahu again, crossing Pisces again, we might have um, we might have something developing around this towards Venus passage, and this goes a couple of months, because I just see that popping up, that talisman popping up as I speak. More about that. Many of them will have to protect whistleblowers because many of them will have to be whistleblowers. And many of them does not this include Rute or Gates. Okay, because I don't remember Rute being a part of the Rockefellers or Gates being a Rockefeller. So it's kind of like they're not at that level of rank where they would have that level of accountability. But definitely those other levels will try to drop the accountability on those levels, and protection for whistleblowers. Also, when it comes to the judges, because a lot of them will have to be whistleblowers. Um, so that and my prediction for Saturn in Aries for the Netherlands chart is that it's going to create delays in exposure, and then the exposure will arrive while we already have the information that we need to hold something or someone accountable. And of course, the 10th house in the 1800 chart is associated with the military. That would be the 8th house of NATO. Actually, Mark Rutte was trying to decrease the budget for NATO when he was a prime minister, I know this kind of worked against him when he tried to go to the 5% when he became head of NATO, but it kind of works in his favor now. Uh, like I had this POV. You have to represent Mark Rutte on the Achbun case or the Achbun litigation, and the most challenging juristication challenges in the world. Then, if I had to do that, then I would be. I'm not a lawyer, so I can freely say that. Nobody's gonna ask me to do that. So I would pick and sort where Mark Rutte, during being prime minister, tried to actually reduce the budget, and that by the time that he became head of NATO, the class litigations against Pfizer and Moderna were already inactive. So I could say that he would try to mitigate the money allocation that goes to those military operations. Um, yes, and try to pull that card to kind of show him as the remediating factor, as the factor that try to make things not go as terrible. Um, so that would be one point. Okay, if we kind of playing, one would say the devil's advocate. Some people say these guys worship the devil. I mean, um, but anything. Oh, Saturn Aries, satanic ritual abuse and sacrifice for Moloch or devil or Baal or whatnot. Um, they that thing gonna be exposed. Like that thing gonna be having like that if before Pluto entered Aquarius for good, I said folk can get out of the lodges, and I said it to a part of my family. Um, that later explained that they're naming their dog something to do with Lucifer, says in English, the devil in me. So they're kind of like giving me the message, I guess, to back off or something. Um, but that was, but I wasn't coming in rage prophecies. I was like, hey, that's the time where we can still do something about that. Um, and my a warning, okay, kind of like the Nineveh. If I would liken myself to Elijah being vomited on Nineveh and to the crowd being Nineveh, Saturn, because it's the same eclipses that were around the Nineveh, okay, the 2017, the 2024 eclipses. Um, um, and so my word of warning before Saturn ingresses to Aries for good, and it ingresses to meet Neptune on the 0 degree world degree, okay, my warmest word, warmest word of warning of like how to preventative, like repent. Saturn Neptune is compatible with repent, is to stop dead in its tracks every single act of sacrifice of a human and every single act against the sovereignty of every single individual around the world. Now, people might say, Shirley, come on, da, 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 da. Don't say, Shirley, come on. Later, you meet me at another Facebook account, at another YouTube account, at another one. You see that other one was kind of like weird, and then, oh, damn, that's that girl that told us about that. Yes. And you saw where I previously stopped that we had your ascendant on my lot of divination, okay? So, and we see them in heaven with Ketu, between Ketu and the moon, when I speak about that, okay? And ascendant is conjoining my own Ketu. Um, so I'm not joking when I'm talking about these things, okay? I hear stuff just yesterday when I look at the Van Castle. I see stuff like Mark Rutte should be held accountable, be behind bars, and of course be executed. Now, Mark Rutte And any such person would be created in those death camps that would be ritually abused, forced to ritually abuse. Only way out would be to be, I don't know, a prostitute at a red light district, and which would still be under handlers and so on and so forth, or to be in a position of Peggy Van Roy, or to be in a position of Lars. But not only that, if he's seen as the royal bloodline, or as the warrior, he's seen as the warrior bloodline, because he has Mars in Scorpio. I know I have 22 Mars in Scorpio. Okay. That's why I'm tending to these things, okay? But that would basically mean that they would not give up on him so easily, okay? And so to get to the nitty-gritty of that, we need to deal with the wealth consolidation. Elizabeth April has a fantastic video about the people behind the wealth consolidation practices. And if we want to not have the same situation all over again 84 years from now, when Uranus goes again into Taurus, okay, then that's the currency war. It's currency war clock. Uranus Taurus, currency war clock. People are like, Shirley, but it's in. Wait a second with the civil war. Uranus is not done going through Taurus. We're still talking currency war clock. Okay, last currency war clock was the Second World War, the First and Second World War, and it's those same people. Give or take a monarchy, it's the same people. If you're like give and take a monarchy, House of Orange be like, what do you mean give or take a monarchy? How do you mean take a monarchy? um, but this is where, you know, this is where addressing, if we address it at a beautiful, lively execution of certain leaders, guillotine style, we did nothing, because the same families that founded the United States in 1776 are still running the Diddler Show in 2025. For Anneke Lucas, that somehow managed to escape, knowing every single day of her life, and she was born in 1963, mind you, the year they assassinated JFK, right? The JFK assassination was 63 or 60. Um, so every single day of her life, she is living with the fact that there are children still in there, that all she can do is speak, and that she's risking her life to speak and being shut down in the algorithms. Um, for, take that, join Hans Medema, and we got a century. Okay, 2050s, when Aries will be at the end of towards ingressing into Taurus, that would be a century of Aries in Aries. And same things happening, starting exact same scenarios. Cuba Missile Crisis, we had that in NATO. Nobody talked about that, but there were several such occasions, from the cable cut to actual literal missiles and whatnot. And yes, no, to full-blown, what is a bioweapon, medical weapon? It's the same thing that were done to the indigenous societies, and it's the same thing that was done in the Second World War by Mengele. And, it's the same trajectories and the same timelines, the same tactics all over again. Um, and then, hanging some people and making a lovely show just keeps those that create the same structure and perpetuate the same structure changing the heads rather than changing the structure. Now, I'm a night chart. I don't know how to change the structure. I just speak. So, But Saturn in my ninth house, I speak about the structure, and to remove one's head from the guillotine, because the timeline of head on the guillotine for those leaders has already been created, and it's not being created by the people. It's being created by the upper rank, that Elizabeth April, that Annika Lucas mentions some, and Elizabeth April mentions the rest. It's her video about the Illuminati, but it's absolutely not just the Illuminati. And replace name Illuminati, you still take who are the ones, that the families that are benefiting from that, and this is where then those are the ones that create the guillotine timeline, and to shift from that timeline that has already been created would be to practically abolish all forms of ritual abuse. And I said the core issue is sexual boundary violation in spirit and in matter. So let's say no touch torture is violation of the life energy, Kundalini energy. Okay, and these circles know what I'm talking about. Then anything that would be on purpose, okay, harming that, should be stopped. And by the Saturn Neptune ingress, we will not have the Saturn Neptune. Saturn ingresses into Aries with Neptune 0° Aries, okay, tropical zodiac. I'm sure my sidereal astrologers are going to see the same things from their own perspectives. It's still a world degree, tropically speaking, and it's still, it would be in Pisces on a sidereal zodiac, which would give us megalithic karma to anything related to orthodoxy religion, satanic ritual abuse. Like there's nothing more satanic ritual abuse under the guise of whichever religion, medicine, and even channeling, okay, on a global scale. And Pisces also have to do with maritime law. So even if whether I look at it sidereally or I look at it tropically, we ain't gonna have time to strategize when Saturn Neptune's. By that time, there should be no abuse of any single cell. Talk about the cloning farms. From the cell to the grave, any type of ritual abuse, indigenous and elite. Okay, don't think the indigenous can get away with that. No, that gets colonialism timeline. And the structures have already been prepared for those timelines as well. So the only way to kind of like repent in the spirit of the Nineveh biblical story would be absolute and total abruption of any pattern of ritual abuse in spirit and in matter, targeting at the life energy, sovereignty, identity, sexual sovereignty, and so on and so forth, of an individual, which means an individual cell and an individual person. It sounds big, but hey, haven't we had 9 millennia to prepare? That's going to be sextile in Sedna. It sounds big, but it's also true. Um, to the level that humanity repents, so to speak, is to the level we will manage to prevent the heads of the guillotine. The sacrifice timeline, the try to make somebody else have that karma, the this, the that, none of that is going to actually get people to get away with that one. Okay? Think Rolodex. All the folks that thought they got away with the Rolodex are gonna be exposed in guillotine time. Okay? Pluto and Aquarius is guillotine o'clock. So all the folks that thought they got away with the Rolodex are going to be exposed in guillotine o'clock. Saturn Neptune in Mars sign is names. Mars rules names. Now here's the thing. I don't have the names. I'm not Mark Detru. I don't know who are the names involved. I'm just a commoner. I'm just a citizen. But I can say that whenever, for example, when they stopped torturing Lars in a hospital and he actually got a way to heal and recover, a political assassination was prevented. At least from the threat that they would torture a person in hospital until they get to a breaking point, and then the police parts like denial. We saw that happening. It happened before in Netherlands. Okay, that's not something that never happened. In fact, the case of Peter R. de Vries exposed how a person that would not take the ultimatum that Geert Wilders and his spouse took, where suddenly they're being literally kidnapped, told that it's in their favor. They could have been assassinated, kidnapped, and be a Heineken case, and and they have to trust that they're not. There was this documentary about Wilders a couple of months ago, and he tells this story, and they're being kidnapped. Basically, told that this is for their safety because there was a safety threat. Now, this is also to see what would a person agree to do, supposedly to protect his safety, because tomorrow they can do a Heineken on him, and it's going to be the police doing that. So it's not. It's the same guys that gunned down Van Kessel one sudden morning. Um, but definitely that dumb fuckery timeline that went on in 1996, where people were marching the White March and other people were ritually abusing folks, children. That dumb fuckery doesn't get, that fucking around timeline gets a find out 28 years later. And the Saturn karma, again, is not about revenge. It's about correcting a timeline. And here's the thing. To litigate the handlers behind the Epstein list, one would need to tend to MK often. Who was behind gloved hand? Without knowing that science, without accepting that, without addressing what looks like science fiction, there is no Rolodex list. Not because there isn't a Rolodex list. There are active cells in the memory of Mark Detru. Okay? I don't think Mark Detru will ever forget those names on that list, albeit the technologies that try to erase memories. Mark Detru was going full-blown Alandra. 1996, he was going full-blown Alandra. If you don't know who is Alandra, then you should watch episode 9 in the podcast of Annika Lucas. bridging educational gaps. Um,